Hi, everyone. My name is Becky Robinson. I'm the founder and CEO of Weaving Influence, and I'm so thrilled to be with my friend Priscilla Archangel today. And we will be talking about leadership fundamentals during times of crisis. So, as you're coming in, we're so happy to greet you, and I see that some of you are coming in. I'm so pleased that you've joined us, and I hope you'll take a moment to chat with us. We'd love to hear where you're calling in from in the chat today. This happens to be a Michigan call, except for Kelly, our chat host, who's from South Carolina. But we're both in the state of Michigan. We would love to know where you're calling in from. And I would also invite you to comment on the weekly chat prompt, which is, what are you grateful for today? I'm grateful for some rain that we had this morning, and I'm grateful that my colleague Kelly Griffin has safely delivered her baby girl as of last night. So I mentioned that in my email if you happen to read it. We're so grateful that Kelly's baby Clover Ann has arrived safely, and we're hoping to be able to share some photos of her later because she's so beautiful. So I'd love to hear from you. Say hello. And Priscilla, before I introduce you, would you be willing to share what you're grateful for today?
Certainly. Thank you so much, Becky. I'm grateful for health, good health for both me and my husband in the middle of these challenging times that we're in. And I too am expecting another little baby. My niece is due any day now, any moment now, with a baby boy. So
That is so exciting. So welcome, Guy in Ottawa. It's good to see you. I'm glad you're getting some rain too. And I see that you hope that you get more. I think that we're supposed to get more rain tomorrow here in Michigan as well. So as others of you are coming in, I would welcome you please to share your thoughts in the chat. And when you do that, I would gently remind you to use the drop-down menu to change your preference to all panelists and attendees so that as you comment on today's topics, everyone can read your thoughts. So I want to take a quick moment to introduce Priscilla. And I also want to let you know that she is working on an exciting new book that will be coming out later this summer. We were chatting about it before we started. There have been a few delays due to COVID, but the book is expected soon. And a little bit about Priscilla's background. She's a seasoned executive coach, a leadership and organizational development consultant, an author, a speaker, and a teacher. And prior to forming her own business, she held a variety of strategic global human resource and executive roles at a Fortune 10 company over the course of her 30-plus career. And she focused on leadership development, talent management, talent acquisition, coaching, change management, culture change, performance management, organizational development, and HR operations. So again, to reference the new book, it is 7 Essential Steps to Peak Leadership, and it will be released soon. And Priscilla holds a PhD in human and organizational development and is a John Maxwell team certified coach, speaker, and teacher. So Priscilla, you bring so much expertise to this call, and I'm really looking forward to learning from and with you. So again, welcome.
my pleasure being here. I thank you so much for the invitation.
Of course. Really quickly before we dive into our content, I want to welcome our friends who are chatting with us. Welcome Joanne in California. She's grateful for Zoom. And welcome to Kristen in Columbia, Missouri. And she's grateful for soccer league starting up again and kids being able to play. That's awesome. And again, also welcome to Erica in North Carolina. It's good to see you, Erica. Priscilla, throughout the course of these events, we've had a lot of our regulars who show up. So I'm grateful for all of you regulars. It's great to have you. So as we dive in, Priscilla, we're all aware that now more than ever, leaders need to improve our capabilities. And I feel that every day when I come to work. The only way to survive and thrive through the pandemic, the social unrest, the economic uncertainty is for us to focus on these 6 key fundamentals. And I'm really anxious for you to share that with us today. So where would you like to start? Are we going to just talk through these 6?
Yeah, we can just talk through them. And I might kind of just lead off by saying, I remember the day, it was March 13th, when I began to just shut down and said, it's time to go in the house and close the door because this stuff is really, really getting bad. And what I discovered is also many of my clients going on what I'll call life support in the context of, let's figure out, what are the absolute, most important things that we need to do to either keep the business running or make sure, we minimize any risk or figure out how people can work remotely. it was just, it was part strategic and part tactical, but it was all about operations focus until they began to realize that you need more than just an operations focus. It's not just the decisions you need to make, it's your overall leadership skills and capabilities that then began to come into sharp focus in terms of how they manage through this crisis.
Wow, and that makes a lot of sense to me, Priscilla, that there was a certain period of time in our organizations where we had to just focus on what was in front of us. But now that it's been several months, it becomes obvious that there are other considerations besides survival. So as we dive in, I know we want to talk about each of those fundamentals, and the first one is adaptability. So let's talk a bit more. Why is adaptability so critical for us in our organizations?
So hindsight is 2020, of course, and what we see is a whole series of fast changing situations. The economic impact of COVID, the health impact of COVID, the way that COVID impacted our businesses in ways that, quite frankly, none of us would have ever been able to anticipate. Sometimes big companies, the federal government, whoever, they'll do tabletop exercises on severe threats like a pandemic. Most of the rest of us had not done that. And so we could not even imagine how COVID would affect our business. And so we've had a variety of fast changing conditions that leaders have had to be very adaptable to, in terms of how do we make a decision in the middle of this? What do we do? How do we pivot? One of the new popular words that we're all using now, the word pivot, okay? But how do we figure out the different ways to adapt to doing business in this type of environment? And that really, it really takes getting out of your normal ways of doing things, which quite frankly, many of us are ingrained in because it worked in the past, well, we'll keep doing it. Now, all of a sudden that didn't work. So it's how do you all of a sudden think of new and different ways, invite new and different perspectives in, and open yourself up to. And so here's one great example. For years and almost decades in corporate America, we had this debate about working remotely. Can employees work effectively remotely? How do we track their, productivity? How do I know what they're doing? How can I connect with them if I can't see them? And just a whole host of discussions on how effective it was to work remotely. Well, in a day, in an instant, now all of a sudden, many people were working remotely if they were working at all. And it worked. And, the IT systems, maybe with a little bit of finagling, the IT systems worked and people were able to connect, and they made it work because we all had to. So that's, the biggest wonderful example of adaptability in a situation like that, when you're really forced into it.
Yeah, certainly. So I think a lot of organizations are becoming surprised at people's ability to work effectively in a remote way. I had a conversation with my brother. He's a corporate vice president in a manufacturing company based in North Carolina. And I was talking to him a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about how everyone is returning to in-person work at his company. But he told me the story of a young mother who was really struggling because she doesn't feel like it's safe to put her 10-year-old daughter back in summer camps and would prefer to remain working remotely. And my brother told me a little bit about the struggle between kind of the CEO and president and him as the corporate vice president willing to make an exception because, frankly, he saw that she could fulfill her role just as excellently from home as in the office. And so my brother, shared with me that he was going to take a stand. But I think that when we come up against these rigid rules, and then we have some new experience that tells us that potentially those rigid rules were not serving us well, that's when adaptability comes into play.
And that's an excellent example also, Becky, because what we also see here in, I'll say at least in the Michigan area, but even all across the country, I've heard of some larger companies, they're allowing their employees, their team members to work from home maybe at least through the end of the year, or to fluctuate, how many days do you want to come in the office? Do you want 3 days in or 2 days in the office? And so they are being, again, very adaptable because there's a lot of things going on. There's still trying to keep sufficient space, social distancing going on in the office. There is the need to accommodate people who have children, and there's not the typical safer arrangement to take care of the children. Companies are also realizing, hey, I can hire someone that lives 2 states away and they don't ever have to move here. That, I can get that person that I wanted that didn't want to relocate, but now they can work remotely, maybe travel here periodically. But there's all sorts of different work arrangements going on that people are much more open to now after this experience. And they're much more adaptable.
Certainly so. So the second important fundamental is anticipating problems. Can you talk to me a little bit about what you mean when you say that leaders need to anticipate problems?
Sure. So this is really part of understanding what your processes are, even updated and changed processes in the middle of everything that's going on. But thinking through all the steps of what's going on and being able to anticipate where there will be an issue. So take, for example, a lot of employers have put together playbooks for return to work. What will that look like? They have to be able to anticipate from start to finish, once an employee or a team member comes on the property, every scenario that might potentially happen and how they can keep those employees safe, and keep the workplace environment safe from any potential threat of COVID-19. We saw here in the Michigan area, as some of our automotive manufacturers went back to work, they had a couple of blips with employees that tested positive, and they maybe had to shut the plant down and disinfect it again before everyone came back. But the ability to appropriately anticipate problems. One of the things that some of them are finding, though, is sometimes you can only control what happens end to end in terms of when the employee arrives at work and leaves work. What you cannot control, of course, is what the employees do on their own time outside of work. Are they practicing safe social distancing? And sometimes I recognize that's in the eye of the beholder, but nonetheless, are they participating in practices that might make them more susceptible to get COVID, and then come back to the workplace and bring that in a time when they may be asymptomatic, may not be properly detected when they're coming back in. So now some employers are training or upskilling employees in terms of safe practices that they are at least recommending to their employees when they are not at work, to keep people safer at work. So that's just one more example of how can you anticipate potential problems, potential trouble spots, because it's going to pop up, and it's really impacting all of us. We are all connected in some way. We can't get away from any of it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think now more than ever, we are aware of how we can't control what goes on, outside of our own buildings. And it's interesting too, because I think manufacturers, like you mentioned, automotive industry, they're used to dealing with safety and health issues. But, in an office environment like, the one that I worked in prior to COVID, prior to all of us going back home, we didn't really think that much necessarily about safety as a concern at work. So there are so many new things to think about that we haven't had to before. So let's talk about the importance of purpose and passion.
Yes, purpose and passion is, as leaders look at what's most important to them in the way they run their business and where they focus their time and in their lives. And it's important because this will help, this is where they can leverage that strength in the work that they do, leading their companies, just in leading themselves, communicating to others. Purpose or passion may not be just directly what my job is entailing, but it may be also about how I care for other people, how I want to develop my people, how I want to make sure my team is safe. And if I have a passion around that, then I will then make certain decisions that align with that, that will help create the right workplace, that will help create the right environment, that will help keep others safe as we go forward. So it's important not to lose sight of what we're about. So another example is my purpose and passion is all around leadership development. I joke now that my 30-year career at General Motors prepared me now, and that's, again, a Fortune 10 company, prepared me now to be a solopreneur, a company of one, okay? But it prepared me with so many different scenarios and issues in terms of learning how to lead effectively, okay? And so my purpose and passion is all around building effective leaders. Well, when COVID hit, I was smack dab in the middle of, working on my book and, working with my editor and all the processes of my book. I had, other topics outlined as you well know, Becky, as we go out on social media, we're we have topics outlined for the year, topics we want to cover. And all of that had to go by the wayside because on one hand, it wasn't really relevant to COVID and the immediate crisis that hit in March. But what I did there again is because of my purpose and passion, I said, well, how are we leading in a crisis? Okay. So I stayed true to my leadership theme, but I looked at where the greatest need is. And so how are we leading in a crisis? So I began working with clients and doing a number of webinars on how are they effectively leading through a crisis to help them move forward.
So have you seen anything from your clients or ways that leaders are tapping into their purpose and passion in order to have greater endurance or resilience during the crisis? Can you think of any stories?
Yeah, so one example is because on one hand we have fewer distractions, people can't go out and do all the things that they used to do. Think of all the extracurricular events that used to crowd our schedule, and now I go to the grocery store, I can't find flour on the shelves, I can't find cooking spray, I can't find other things because people are cooking more and baking more, and they're spending more time with family. And so I'm seeing that greater focus on staying home, spending more time with family, and thinking through what's most important to me. And that's the biggest. What's most important to me right now. And so beyond family, as I look at my work, where do I really want to focus my time, and where can I get the biggest gain, and how can I care about my team? Okay. And so those are the types of things that I'm seeing.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you. So connection and engagement. This one seems obvious, especially for those of us who have watched the numbers about how many people in the workplace are disengaged. But let's talk about this fundamental of connection and engagement and how you see leaders focusing on this right now.
So one of the things that I keep reiterating with all my leaders is communicate, communicate, communicate. Because we are not physically together, because I can't walk down the aisleway and lay eyes on you and, even make a split-second assessment of how are you doing? Do you look despondent? Do you look happy? Do you look motivated? Do you look unmotivated? Because we can't just have those casual hallway conversations, because we can't sit down and eat lunch together. Leaders have to reach out to their teams and find out how they're doing. And this is not, get that report done by 2 p.m. or how are we doing on that project? It's how's your spouse? How's your kids? Oh, there's your dog in the background. What's his name? How are you doing? Okay. It's really honing in on their mental health and their emotional health to a degree. Not that any of us, need to be therapists, but making sure you know how your team members are doing, because the emotional toll of this is so much greater than we realize. And so that connection and engagement is, the virtual happy hours that I see some leaders and organizations doing, okay? It's, just time to just sit and talk about anything other than work. It's making sure that, I started out telling them, call your people every day. Talk to them on the phone or see them on Zoom, even for 10 minutes every day, just to check and see how they're doing. Give them some grace. I mean, my office has always, since I've been a consultant, been in my home. I'm used to that. I didn't have to, change or shift anything. But for other people, they're trying to figure out where to work quietly in their house or how to keep their kids occupied while they're on a conference call or whatever. So you got to give people grace. You got to help people have some time to adjust to that and to adapt to that. And so that's what builds bonds. That's what builds relationships, because you want to keep people engaged. And it doesn't matter if they say, hey, I need two hours off in the middle of the day to work with my kids, and I'll jump back on at 8 o'clock at night when they're, down for the night. These are ways we can support our teams, okay, to help lead them through periods of uncertainty and insecurity.
Yeah, I love that. We were with our team for a while having daily employee check-ins at 9 a.m. After a while, we found we didn't need that everyday check-in, but certainly when things are so uncertain, it's useful to be able to be together. So let's talk about innovation.
Yes. Yeah, so this is huge. Seeing opportunities where others don't. I have some wonderful examples. Uh, when everything first shut down, what were the crisis opportunities? Sufficient PPE, personal protective equipment, having sufficient ventilators, okay? I am so proud to say and hear that a number of our automotive companies and other companies in the area, they, again, the word pivot, all right? They shifted from making cars to making ventilators, all right? Teaming up with ventilator makers, sourcing parts because they have manufacturing space, they have empty manufacturing space, they have supplier relationships, they have processes, they know how to get things up and running quickly. So they've been able to manufacture additional ventilators, which is a huge issue. They've been able to manufacture masks and screens, which is a huge issue in keeping the country safe. So seeing opportunities where others don't, because I admit I wouldn't have thought that they would be able to make that shift this quickly to be able to help so many people. And that's just a few examples. There are many other examples that I'm sure all of you have, but being able to see opportunities where others don't and make decisions. Now, other examples are companies and businesses who, again, had to say, well, we used to do this pre-COVID. This product or service isn't selling as much, but you know what? We can use the skills that we have, we can use the expertise that we have to do something different and still keep our business going, keep people employed. Maybe it's a bit of a different customer base, but we can keep thriving in the middle of a pandemic. So that innovation is just huge because we know that economically we're shifting as a nation, as a world, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Some businesses won't recover, some industries won't recover in quite the same way, but there will be new opportunities. We just have to find them and seize them.
Thank you for that. Um, so the last one is clarity of their talents, and I'm really curious to hear more about this one.
Yes. So this is about knowing what you do well, knowing what your leadership strengths are. To relate that to the prior example of automotive companies, they knew what their talents were and brought their talents to the table in a different way. As individuals, we can similarly know what our talents are and bring them to the table in a different way. I've talked to people who are in wealth management and the insurance business, and they are able to use their talent to help clients in a new and a different way, because now all of a sudden some people really got serious about, oh, I think I need life insurance. Okay, not to be negative about it, but I really need to make sure I have that life insurance that I've been talking about and never getting. Okay, just other strengths and talents that you have. We have people who have used social media talents in new and different ways to help other companies. It's really digging in and knowing who you are and coming to the table in different ways. I know companies who have leveraged their employees in different ways because they recognize the employees have other talents than those commonly used. So I was talking with a client yesterday who works for a large manufacturing company, and she has talents that have helped them pivot on a dime and provide learning online. All the learning that they used to do face-to-face, and not that they did all of it face-to-face, but she was kind of pushing them before that we need to go virtual, and it just wasn't that important to them. Nobody anticipated a pandemic, and then all of a sudden in a split second she was able to leverage her technical talents in new and different ways and help them go virtual, and then reach a broader spectrum of employees that they have across the whole globe that the face-to-face sessions could not reach in the past. So she's very valuable to that team.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Last week we were talking on a webinar about staying marketable and staying visible in your jobs, even when working remotely. Bonnie Marcus was our expert last week, and she shared a story about someone she worked with who initiated the creation of a video newsletter to share success stories with their clients and how powerful that was. So that's what your example reminded me of last week's learning. So I'm curious, for those of you who are here with us, which of these 6 fundamentals resonates with you most? We talked about adaptability, We talked about anticipating problems, purpose and passion, connection and engagement, innovation, and clarity of talents. And I'm wondering for those of you on the call, and thank you, Kelly, for grabbing those 6 and putting them in the chat, maybe even just use a number 1 to 6. Which of these is one that you're focused on in your organization or in your individual work life, and which is important to you as a leader today? If you have a moment to share that. So Ron says 4, Joanne says 4. We'll see if others have the chance to answer. We are coming toward the end of our time together, Priscilla, so I'm hoping that you can spend a few moments talking to us about the new book and how these ideas might be in the new book, or how people could learn more from you. And I'm seeing more 4s. It seems like number 4 is really critical, and 2 also from one person. 2 is anticipating problems. So
that it's great to see your feedback that connection and engagement seems to be a leading criteria right now. My book, I'm so excited about it, Leader Vantage, 7 Steps to Peak Leadership. And I am one of the things that I love is being very practical with my clients. I'm about trying to get results, and I use storytelling as a means of giving them examples to help lead them to solutions as well. And what I typically do is every month I share a leadership insight with my tribe, with my collection of people who I love to interact with. And I know that you'll provide everyone with information on signing up for that leadership insight soon. And it's always a story, an example filled with some practical examples of how to overcome a situation or how to effectively conquer a situation. And so what I've done is collected about 50 of those writings in my next book, Leader Vantage. And as I looked through the stories that I wanted to share with everyone, I found that there were 7 key themes, and that was understanding your leadership purpose, your leadership perspective, leadership values, leadership traits, leadership behaviors, leadership tools, and leadership ideas. And so I've packaged those together in a book and shared a story around how it really is applicable to your work in ways that will strengthen your leadership capabilities. And so it's kind of a collection of wisdom that I have learned and experienced, because interestingly, I can never really write about something unless I have a full experience with it. And so I hope that it's a benefit to all of my readers.
And that will be coming soon. And Kelly is putting in the chat a number of different links that you can follow to sign up for Priscilla's list. And we also have the opportunity to, let me see. I don't think I have your email here. Yes, I do. Okay. If you email Priscilla, she will enter you into a drawing to receive a complimentary copy of the new book when it's available. So we would invite you to email Priscilla, and then all these links and information will also be in the follow-up email that I'll send out later today.
Absolutely.
So thank you for your generosity, Priscilla, and being willing to share a book with one of our attendees today. And as we wrap up the hour, I'm wondering if you can leave us with some encouragement or inspiration for where we are on the journey right now as we wrap up our time together.
Yes, and I would say, rest assured that none of us can predict the future, but with the right leadership skills, you can effectively deal with whatever the future brings. And so continue to develop as leaders. That should be the foundation for all the strategic and tactical decisions you need to make.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.